I'm going to call the meeting to order for the Oconee County Planning Commission. Today is Monday, December 1st at 6 p.m. First is invocation. Mr. Nix, could I get you to lead us off in that?
Pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better and freer place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We've got the minutes before us. I think there are a couple of changes that we needed to make. But before that, do I have an approval of those?
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
And then regarding those changes, the very last item on the last page, you had mentioned what is the change that needs to be made there?
So it should read, let me get there, sorry. It should read, Mr. Nix made a motion to put the discussion regarding the changing of right-of-way requirements on private roads from the 32 right-of-way to match the private road distance of a 20-foot right-of-way on the next agenda. So I need to add on the next agenda to the motion.
Okay. Are there any other changes that anyone saw need to be adjusted or changed? All those in favor of approving those minutes as adjusted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All right. There are no public comments for non-agenda items. We can scratch that through that one. Commission member comments. This is our last meeting of this year. I want to thank everybody that's up here for a long year's work. Appreciate all that everyone has done. Appreciate the citizens that have come to join us in those meetings. And as always, appreciate the staff for all the input that you all do and the after-hours dedication that you all have to come to help us out. Are there other members here that would like to make comments? No, sir? No, sir? All right. Staff comments.
So the only thing that I have is at the last meeting, y'all asked me to figure out what the width was for Collector Road. It's gonna be 66 feet
Okay.
for Collector Roads.
That was the one where one document had 50 and one document had 66, and you were making an adjustment to whatever the real number was
Yes, sir.
on both things.
Yes, sir. It's 66.
We didn't need to vote on that or anything like that, I'm assuming. It was just a matter, we had already done so, if I remember correctly,
Yeah, I think it was just figure out what it is and make it.
and make the adjustment on both documents.
I mean,
Okay?
you can make a motion if you would like, but
Nope.
I don't have specifics in front of me.
But it was 66, or should be 66 on both,
Yes, sir.
in both chapters.
So I have Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so my question is, Collector Road, is that a state road or a county road?
I know we're gonna be bringing, Kyle up, we can sure.
I'm gonna assume, I can double check, but I'm gonna assume it's county.
Okay,
Well, let's ask that, you can ask that question again here in just a little
Okay.
bit.
Sorry.
so before we accept that, we need to know that, because I know that, and I know we're gonna get into this when it comes up here, but state law for a state road is the 66 feet. But then the county law, or state code of law for county roads is different. There's a minimum requirement and it goes from there. So I'm curious of why we chose the 66. And I'm sure Kyle, when he comes up, will let us know that. So can we,
And how did we reference it last? It should be in the minutes here of how we referenced it last
in
time.
one, document it had 50, I think, and the document had 66.
I'm just trying to remember what our instructions were last time. But that is something that I'm sure when Kyle is up here, we can
Okay.
inquire about. I'm not sure that we can vote on it since it's not a new item in the information here. We'll need to take that step. Okay, first item up for the planning commission here is our meeting calendar for 2026. Last month, we were shown all the dates that were available. We did not have a discussion at that time, but I asked you all to look at that. That was if we went back to a 2 meeting. I've included in the backup materials, a 1 meeting. I will say that staff had asked that it be a 1 meeting per month with the ability to add as needed. But this is on the floor for discussion.
I make a motion that we adopt the meeting schedule in the backup material with the exception of the first 2 makeup meetings in June and July. We would not use those. We would use June 1st and July the 6th. And then in the September meeting, since 9/7 is Labor Day, we'd use the 9/10 date. So everything would fall on Monday except for the Labor Day. First Monday of each month. That's my motion.
The June 1st. Was there a reason? Okay, you've got a motion. We need a second. I'll second that. Is there a reason for there to be makeup dates for the June and the July?
So, it's gonna be a conflict with the room, whether that be early voting or, a different committee is utilizing the room. It could be a number of things.
Okay.
Surely it's not
I'll
another
amend-
committee.
Can I amend my motion?
Yes.
So those 6, 4, and 7, 9 fall on Thursday, and that's not an issue with me personally. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm okay with adopting those dates if we can't make the 6/1 and the 7/6 dates
So,
for staff.
I'm sorry, to clarify, the June meeting is because of early voting.
Okay.
July is gonna be,
Vacation,
say again?
4th of July week.
With the 4th falling on a Saturday, I think partial businesses
Correct.
will close on Friday and partial businesses will close on Monday.
Yeah, I believe we're closed on Monday. And then the September meeting is obviously Labor Day.
Gotcha. So your amended motion is what?
My amended motion would be to adopt the meeting in the backup material with the makeup meetings adopted as the days instead of the normal dates.
As proposed here.
As proposed there.
Yeah.
I will second that motion. Further discussion, this last year, we went to 1 meeting a month. I like the 1 meeting a month, but we had it down that if we needed a second meeting, that we would schedule that 3rd week, as long as dates were available. I liked the ability to put an automatic that we can do it as needed, from a chairman's standpoint, rather than calling some kind of special or emergency meeting or something like that, that it was just that extra meeting that month. Is there a reason that, just as an understanding that there's,
So the benefit to keeping it to 1 meeting a month and then being able to call a special meeting is, well, I'm gonna kind of go backwards. If you have 2 meetings a month and you cancel every single, second meeting, you have to advertise for that, which costs money, and you also have to make sure that you advertise for it soon enough. So that's,
If you add a meeting, you're just advertising for those meetings that you've added
correct.
when
So
necessary.
if you only do 2 additional meetings, you're only advertising for the 2 versus, canceling 6.
Or
and-
forgetting to cancel. Any more, do we want to continue discussing this? Any other conversation here? All those in favor of Mr. Nix's motion to use the markup that's been given, with the makeup days becoming the primary days for those months, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Unanimous?
All right, last meeting, we were trying to get clarification from staff on section 26.6, item 4 and 5. We were trying to determine if it was a whole paragraph that there were changes, or if it was just the one wording change.
So it was just the one word, so it was just adding or the designee. to
Or the
entire-
designee was the only change.
Correct.
If you all remember, there was a whole paragraph highlighted in blue, and we weren't quite sure why we had highlighted that in blue, and then it came down to just that designee or designee, like we had made those changes in previous chapters. I'd like to make a motion that we have staff change that or designee, like is changed in other areas of the document, with everything else remaining the same.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right, we've got a conversation regarding encroachments. At our last meeting, we had our document of encroachments as they exist, and then there was a supplemented form of how Pickens County does their documents, and there was a desire to have a bit of a discussion on that, just kind of in looking through, and we brought Kyle in to if there's any questions or need for clarification. In what I'm looking at, it looks like within Oconee County that that the tie-in to that county road, the owner handles that. Whereas in Pickens County, it looks like that Pickens County ties in into that road, that was one of the points of looking at these differences. The other points of differences were when you're tying into that county road, in Pickens County, it kind of shows that if that county says, here's where the location is, if it's where the owner wants to be, if it's not, there's a negotiation to that, of where that encroachment comes in, and then if there is not one available, or the owner can't or won't tie into that location, then the county says, we're just not going to look at that property anymore, and then it's up to the owner to, I'm assuming then, which we could ask Kyle about, they just tie in where they want to. I don't know how that works in Oconee County. Can we bring Kyle up, or do we want to, or are there things that you all want to bring up first in discussion? To you guys, is there anything y'all want to talk about? Because I would like to ask Kyle that question of how we currently handle things. Kyle, can we get you to come up then? So I may be completely off on the way I was understanding our ordinance as opposed to others, but when we were having a discussion on the encroachment issues, we've kind of wondered several things. One, we were going, okay, do we currently have a restriction that says this driveway has to be X number of feet from the next driveway, which has to be X number of feet from the next driveway? That was kind of one question that we had. Another question that we had was, is there ever the situation where an owner wants to attach to a county road and the county says you can't do it there and you can't do it anywhere? Or, I mean, like I know on a state road, or at least I've heard that you ask for the permit with the DOT goes through the process. The DOT cannot refuse you access to a state road, but if it's not permitted where they say, then they're not responsible in any way. I don't know that that's correct, but can you tell us more about how the county handles encroachment?
Yeah, so if somebody comes in the office, they put in an encroachment permit, we ask them to put flags where they want their driveway. We go out and we look at where they want their driveway to be, and we check in sight distance and drainage and all those things. And then, you know, if it doesn't meet sight distance, then they have to pay for a sign that says blind drive ahead. But no, we don't deny access to roads. I mean, now if somebody came in there and said, you know, we want 100 driveways in this little strip of land or whatever, then yeah, that would just, no, I'm not gonna say one access per property, but generally, it's one access per property, because you wanna limit curb cuts, that's conflict points. The other question that you had was, about the DOT and how they're handling it.
Well, no, the next part of that question is when we were looking at the Pickens stuff, Pickens handles the, 15 feet off of the road and handles doing that, whereas Oconee County, it looks like it says that you, the owner, are responsible for tying into our current road. We're just gonna review how you tie in and make sure that everything else is okay. It also talks about if there's a culvert needed, that it's the owner's responsibility in Oconee County. I just wanna make sure that we're understanding those things correctly.
So the county used to put in culverts and put in aprons and cut-ins for driveways. They stopped at some point in time, I'm not exactly sure when, it was before I got here, which was '09. But they stopped at one point in time, I guess. The concern was that you had people calling in wanting to put driveways in that kind of went nowhere, or back out, back entrance kind of thing and that kind of stuff, and there was no way to differentiate that. And then skin in the game came into, you pay to put your own in to our standards, or we put it in at 2.5 times the cost of materials, because we're not trying to compete with small businesses.
Right.
To do that, some people have us put them in, some people put them in themselves.
Is there, as we're going through this, is there anything that we should be looking at that you're going, this needs to be adjusted because this has never worked right? From your standpoint regarding these curb cut access for an owner to access onto a county road?
Not really, we don't really pull bonds, we don't make people pull bonds generally. I mean, that would be something that if they were, maybe running the sewer line down a whole road or whatever else, but generally they just resurface it and we don't require that. The bond thing is maybe the only thing, but I mean, it may be useful at some point in time for somebody. But other than that, not really. On the policy side, we give 90 days to put in a driveway, and that seems like that's probably too little. And then we have to extend it and that kind of stuff, so. I'm not saying we need to give like 5 years for somebody to put in a driveway, but 90 days seems to be a little, hard to maneuver that, kind of a deal. And we try to tell people, you have 90 days or whatever else, but sometimes they want it when they want it, and, you tell them, and then they don't get it put in, and then.
I didn't see that as a date in here. Is that something that once they apply for the permit, that there's a set of
Permit
rules?
policy and, and the
Okay.
policy and then the application itself, which is all part of the ordinance that was passed, that was,
Do you see any of that working in a cumbersome way? And let me preface it by, I believe, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Nix in a moment, but I believe that the Pickens County, the reason that it was brought in as an example is it gave consumer clarification on the front end before getting the application of here's the things you're gonna need to do when this process takes place. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I should let Mr. Nix jump in here as to the bringing up of the Pickens County.
Well, actually, the question I wanted to get to was the civil fine. Why is it $500 a day after the 90 days? That seems excessive. I just want to know why that much?
I don't know that we've ever found anybody that I can remember. I think it's just
Everybody going
consistent.
past the 90 days. I said that's because they're terrified of going past the 90 days.
No, I mean, we're not, the civil fine I thought was for if they were doing work within the right of way and then not putting
getting
it
a permit.
back.
Yeah, it says violation of the encroachment permit policy.
Right.
So
Yeah,
what does
so,
that
I mean,
mean?
that's, I'm not gonna say ambiguous, but I mean, if somebody didn't correct something, then that would be of issue. If they don't do the work, then that's not in violation of it. That's just they haven't done the work in the application that they applied for. If somebody does it wrong, then they need to fix it, because the only thing that we're gonna ask them to fix is something that's of danger to the public. Leaving holes open on the side of the road, or, piles of dirt, or whatever it may be. But the $500 fine, to my memory, and forgive me, I'm not an expert on all the ordinance, but to my understanding or my memory, it's pretty consistent all the way through the ordinance as far as $500 a day. But if it's not, then obviously we'd make it consistent with everything else.
This takes the place, if I'm understanding correctly, of the need for a bond up front. Is just the, hey, guys, there's a steep fine, rather than charging you up front as a bond to say, if you put a pothole in our road, then you're gonna fix it. This just says, if you put a pothole in our road, we're gonna charge you $500 a day to fix it.
It could be, but I mean, 90 days, I can tell you, if they put a pothole in the road, I'm gonna go fix that in a couple of days. I'm not gonna wait 90 days and finding them $500 to do it. I mean, that's not reasonable on my end of it, to sit there and save, or not save, but keep somebody from, save people money, keep somebody from damaging their car, so to speak. The bond thing is more like, if you're not a utility or something like that, and you're somebody out here doing, and again, we haven't had this issue, but somebody coming out here doing extensive work to the right of way, then, that would be just something to hold the county to sit there and say, if you don't do it right, the county's not gonna take this on to fix it, you will, kind of a thing. And sometimes $500 a day is not enough to add up to the damage that they may do, So I think the bond's more there for that, but we really haven't had anything that kind of rose to that level of needing to pull a bond for somebody doing work along the right of way.
Have you had issue with driveways being in too close proximity accessing to a?
Oh, sorry, that was your other question. Forgive me. So by policy, we tell people, you need to stay 5 foot off your property line with the radius that you come off with your driveway, and then 75 feet away from an intersecting road. So, and again, we don't limit people from not being able to put in a driveway because of that. That's a policy thing. But normally, the 5 foot thing's not a question, but, sometimes you've got properties that have smaller, flag lots or some pie-shaped lot or whatever it may be. So, we've just tried to tell people, we try to keep people from being directly on top of their neighbor, because, it just leads to more conflict to have a back-to-back driveway kind of thing. You kind of want to have a little bit of separation. And then people complaining, they put their driveway on my property, obviously. Generally not a great thing to deal with.
Yes, sir.
So, if a person has an already established encroachment on a county road, if they decide to widen their road, is that an alteration of the encroachment that would require an encroachment permit?
Generally, yes, if they're changing their access. Now, again, we work with people, so if they've got a driveway pipe that's already shot and they're looking at making their access bigger or whatever else, if we're gonna have to replace their driveway pipe, we just replace the driveway pipe, and accommodate that. But if they're wanting to go to like a 40-foot driveway pipe, then that's kind of special, so to speak. So the driveways generally now, they're 20-foot sticks of pipe, and they were 20-foot sticks before, but the driveways now, things have gotten bigger, trucks have gotten bigger, so we try to do a little bit more than that. If we're repairing something or putting something back, that's more, not really if you're putting 4-foot stick of pipe on it or something like that. That it's more for if you're widening out along, way wider than what you had it before.
So I got a question for you. I noticed the Pickens County ordinance, as far as the concrete driveways, they're stopping them 15 foot before if I read this correctly, before the roadway or the pavement edge. Concrete driveways are becoming more of a thing here in Oconee County. Does that create an issue, when you go to put in utilities and all on the public right-of-way?
Normally, you know, if they've got an encroachment permit, they know they have to put it back. Normally, they're not gonna cut a concrete driveway, and, you know, generally, we don't really prefer them cutting a asphalt driveway, but, yeah, they can bore under, or they can do something like that. But, no, we don't limit them from running their concrete driveway, to the road, if that's what they wanna do.
So if they do run it up to the road, I've seen this before, there's a lack of taper on the fresh poured concrete driveway and the paved road. Does that create a hazard?
Lack of taper, as far as you talk
Yeah,
about,
so
they leave
yeah.
in case you overlay the road.
Yeah.
Not any more than an OG curb or a standard curb would, but I mean, you know, it's generally you get into an issue where it's 2 inches plus or minus, and they're not 2 inches, they're, you know, inch maybe, that they build it up 3/4 of an inch generally. But no, not that we have seen as far as like causing a hazard itself. You know, if we go in and mill the road and raise the road up, then sometimes it causes heartburn, because we're gonna cut the driveway.
Yeah.
And we're gonna tie back with asphalt further back, because if we raise the road and we have to tie down, then we try not to make their access worse. So they run the risk of, if they concrete it all the way out the right of way, then they do run the risk of it being removed.
So if that apron gets damaged, who's responsible for repair of that apron?
The property owner's
Property
responsible, unless we do it. I mean, if we, you know, if one of my guys backing up, turning a dump truck around and run over the corner of the driveway, and we obviously do it, then we go fix it. But, generally, that's gonna be prepared with asphalt, not concrete, because we don't specify their materials, and they don't specify ours. But, if it's damaged by them, or damaged is the way it's constructed, or damaged by water or whatever else, then yeah, that's theirs to repair.
Okay.
If we're doing a paving contract project or something like that, then, and we're raising the road up and we're tying back, then we're not gonna put that onus on them, but it will be asphalt, it won't be concrete. We don't concrete driveways back.
So this was one of our last things on chapter 26 that we were seeing if there needed to be any kind of adjustment or understanding to. Is there more discussion as far as if there should be any type of change under the current plan? Or are we kind of under the understanding that leave good enough alone with regard to where this is?
We can check on the civil penalty if that's what y'all like. Make sure it's consistent with the rest of the ordinances.
I think that's my only concern now.
Do you want to make a motion to ask staff to check on that to make sure it's consistent with some of the other like kind?
Make a motion to, address the civil penalty in section 26.7 with respect to other sections to make sure it's consistent. If it is, then we'll leave it the same.
Do I hear a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion about that?
Yeah, before he steps down, who initiates the civil penalty?
Oh, that would be us,
It'll be y'all,
yeah.
without any hearing or anything like that?
No, so, like I said, haven't dealt with the issue, but generally, there would probably be several conversations within that 90 days to try to get it fixed. And then, and I may have misspoke, so, sorry if I did. I would probably initiate it to the county attorney to review for them to start, because we don't have enforcement arm to us. So I would assume that generally they come from the county attorney, but I would have to check with David, because like I said, we haven't done it. We've never had everybody, well, for my time here and the situations that we've run into, which has been very, very few and far between, they've fixed them.
Yeah, if you could, can I do a friendly amendment for that to be included in the documentation?
is to do what? You're,
Include in what the process of initiating the civil penalty is. So we can
and
better
bringing
understand.
that back to us
Yes.
as far as what that is. So the motion then was to see, and if it stood, then to leave it as it is. But now you're saying if you would find out if it's consistent and then bring back to us the process.
Yeah, so we can better understand the process to make sure it is a fair and balanced process that gives the property owner enough time to respond to the allegations, not just show up one day and you got a $500 fine today and tomorrow and until you fix this. So I think that's important that we understand how that $500 fine comes about being.
All right, it's late, and do I need to ask then for a second on his friendly amendment to that, or is that your friendly amendment?
I'd like to include that in my
Amendment, okay. And we had a second
motion.
on that motion still?
Yes.
Okay. Any additional discussion on that motion? Did you understand what we're asking for?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Anything else for Kyle on this topic? No? All right, so the next item up is a discussion regarding the right-of-way change. I'm going to recuse myself from that and turn the gavel over to Mr. Nix. And we do have a public speaker there, so let me grab my stuff and I'll step out. There's that, and there's that if you need it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Nix, there are two, public comments in the backup. Didn't
Saw them.
as well. Okay,
Thank
sure, thank you.
Okay, agenda item 11 is discussion regarding the changing of the right-of-way requirements on private roads from the 32-foot right-of-way to match the private drive distance of a 20-foot right-of-way. And I do have one person signed up for public comment, Mr. Jim Codner.
Gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this evening. My name is Jim Codner. I'm with Advocates for Quality Development, and I'm here to represent the interests of our 5,000 plus members. I feel like the Lone Ranger. The subject came up, 6 weeks ago, and you had a packed house. You may be surprised or wondering why you don't have more people here. My guess is they're looking at what the result was last time. They had zero impact on what occurred, and they just didn't feel like coming here again. But here I am. I guess I'd like to lead off by asking, what is the big deal here? Why do we need to do this? Is there a backlog of development requests where, boy, we really need to have much smaller right-of-way requirements? Or is this just something that we're doing to satisfy a need to avoid some sort of impingement on private property rights? My guess is property that would request or fall under this kind of development with a minimal right-of-way is rural. And most likely won't have sewer service, so you're looking at a half-acre lot. Half-acre lots are like 100 foot by 220 feet. Obviously, you can have differences, but 100 feet. Nominal frontage on the road. The difference between 50 feet and 20 feet is 30 feet or 15 feet on each side. I don't see where taking 15 feet off of a 220-foot lot or parcel is that big a deal. And why we would need to take that action and come up with and result in the kind of issues that could come about there. My guess is this is not that widely an issue. If a property owner does have a particular issue with right-of-way, the BZA is always a recourse that can be taken. BZA is an excellent public service organization, which really works hard to resolve differences between strict interpretation of ordinances and private property needs. And oftentimes, the BZA will find in favor of the private property owner if there indeed is an issue there. My big concern about reducing this right-of-way like this is what happens in a fire situation. You've got this, you're talking today about private roads, maybe quarter mile, half mile long. And you've got, someone's put fencing right down to the road because that's what they're allowed to do, or planted trees. So you've actually only got a 20-foot pathway. What happens when you have a fire? Someone calls it in, first to respond may be a sheriff's deputy. And then perhaps the fire and rescue squad will come in, evaluate what's going on, call in more trucks. May or may not have ambulances coming. Got life squads coming, all trying to reach this one property down this very narrow road that really has no room for maneuvering. And I just think you're asking for a major problem if you have a major fire. House is on fire, it's got a barn next door, maybe it's is liable to go up in smoke. It's a windy day, could affect other folks, so speed of response is paramount in a situation like that. And if you've got the road all clogged up because it's just so narrow with all the responding parties, that could be a major problem. Could even lead to loss of life. I think that's just a major issue. The county government does have a responsibility to protect citizens from themselves. We've got, if someone's gonna build a house, they need to follow the electric code, plumbing code. We prescribe setbacks. You can't just put your house or your buildings anywhere you want on your property. You've got to maintain setbacks. All of that's just to provide a reasonable, workable situation for the homeowner. And just because it's your own private property doesn't mean doesn't mean you're able to do your own electrical work or plumbing work without following code. So this, to me, the right-of-way issue is no different than that. It's the same kind of restriction which long-term will benefit the homeowner. It could be that current property owner is perfectly happy with a smaller right-of-way, but what happens when the property changes hands? You're talking about generations later, future owners. I think that could be a major issue if they find that they have just a 20-foot access road to deal with. And I guess in general, I think Kyle might very well agree, it really is good to treat all roads the same way. We ought to have a common standard for roads. Just because we've got, I'm sure we have some non-standard roads that don't meet county requirements in the county, but why would we put more roads in that don't meet requirements? I think this is an unconscionable risk for current and future generations. And it's really pandering to the property rights issue at the expense of public safety. It's a bad idea dressed up in, to avoid takings, not true. Let's not put in a cow path where a decent road is the right thing to do. Thank you for your time.
All right, we also have two letters. I'll go ahead and read those into the record. First one is subject support for county rights of way and their role in public safety to Chairman Johnson and Oconee County Planning Commission members. I'm writing to express my strong support for the county's continued recognition and protection of established rights of way. These public access routes are essential to the safety, accessibility, and overall well-being of our community. Rights-of-way play a critical role in ensuring that emergency services can reach all areas without delay. Fire trucks, ambulances, and law enforcement rely on these corridors to respond quickly during emergencies. In times of fire, medical crises, or natural disasters, uninterrupted access can save lives and protect property. These routes are also vital for evacuation planning, utility maintenance, and long-term infrastructure development. In wildfire-prone areas especially, rights-of-way support fire prevention efforts and enable the rapid deployment of firefighting resources. Their preservation is not just a matter of convenience, it is a matter of public safety. Additionally, rights-of-way support essential public services and help maintain orderly growth and development. They reflect a thoughtful balance between private property interests and the broader needs of the community, ensuring that residents remain connected and emergency access is never compromised. I encourage the County and Planning Commission to continue prioritizing the preservation of these rights and to actively communicate their purpose to the public. Maintaining these corridors demonstrates a clear commitment by you to safety, accessibility, and good planning. Additionally, I really don't think you want to be the group responsible for recommending such drastic reductions in rights-of-way. If there were a safety crisis that occurred caused by this change, the blame and accountability would fall on your shoulders. I hope you all take your roles and responsibility seriously and leave such changes alone. Thank you for your attention in this important matter and for your continued leadership in protecting the interests and well-being of our community. Sincerely, Gary Owens, Salem, South Carolina. And then the next one is, my name is Linda Lovely, and I've lived in Oconee County for 24 years. I have no problem with the proposed shrinking of required rights-of-ways on private roads if all deeds on adjacent properties come with black box warnings similar to the ones on cigarette packs. They should read, warning, purchase of this property may endanger your health and safety. Firefighters and emergency workers, along with ordinary citizens, packed earlier public hearings regarding efforts to shrink road right-of-ways. Since public opposition was totally disregarded, few people may attend tonight's meeting. Last go-round, I provided photos showing the crowded chaos when fire trucks and emergency vehicles responded to a fire on Lutherland Road. Even with vehicles pulled onto that road's 50-foot right-of-ways, only a narrow exit passage remained. I can't imagine the challenge firefighters and EMS would face on roads with a 20-foot right-of-way. The only taking involved in this proposed code change is public safety. It is being sacrificed so developers can boost profits by shoehorning more minimum-sized lots into parcels. The losers are the ultimate homeowners. Perhaps initial buyers will be aware of the potential safety hazards and infrastructure risks associated with proposed scrawny right-of-ways, but future buyers may not. This change is eroding the right of these homeowners to live in safe neighborhoods. Beyond the public safety issues critical with catastrophes, the impacted homeowners may be unable to access the utilities they want if there's no room in crowded public right-of-way space. To add utilities in future years, whether it's natural gas, fiber optics, or tomorrow's upgrade, homeowners may need to plead with neighbors to grant easements, which may not be granted. This is a terrible idea dressed up as a property rights issue. That's all. So do we have a motion to change the right-of-way on private roads from the 32-foot right-of-way to a 20-foot right-of-way?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I think we need to let, the fire marshal, fire chief.
Mr. Klein, would you like Mr. Klein to come?
Well, everybody that
To the
came here to
podium.
speak, we need to let them come up and speak.
We'll start with Mr. Klein and the fire.
Well, let's fire marshal go first,
Okay,
please.
just announce your name to the staff and
Clint Livingston, County Fire Marshal. Just to paraphrase, we already discussed this last time. I deal with commercial properties most of the time. There is several subdivisions that come across my desk that I look at, making sure we can get in and out, that kind of thing, turn around, hydrant distance, that kind of thing. So whatever questions y'all have, be happy to answer or try to answer.
Go ahead.
What's your opinion in changing this down to 20 feet? Does that create a hazard?
So, we had this discussion before, 10 foot off the center line is basically what we're talking about, correct? So, if our trucks are 9.5 foot wide, 8 foot wide, 8.5 foot wide. If somebody's able to put a fence right on the edge of the road, that could potentially prohibit me from opening doors, getting ladders off trucks, pulling hose, that kind of thing. We had that discussion before. Not saying it needs to be necessarily huge area, but we need to have a little bit of extra space to be able to do that kind of thing. Otherwise, we had to park in the center road, which allows for another truck not to pass us. Which is what we talked about, the 26 foot wide, where you had a lane to pass on if it was certain roads, that kind of thing. Bottom line is, emergency services goes down roads all the time right now. It's not designed for a fire truck to go down. My property is in Oconee County. We have 4 lots. I have a 50-foot right-of-way on it. My driveway is not 50 foot wide. It is 20 foot wide, enough to get the truck down. There is a way to turn it around because there's a hammerhead there, which is one of the options that typically use. So, I mean, as from an emergency standpoint, it could slow us down, but it's not gonna prohibit us from coming to help you necessarily. We're gonna do what we can to get to your house, period. I mean, that's our job, that's what we signed up for, at the end of the day. Now, whether it's easy to do, may not be the easiest thing to do sometimes, but there's been several roads built in the county that don't have design standards. I mean, if you ride through Kiwi Key, most of those were not built, to design standard then, when they were built. Which is why Kiwi Key has to have trucks that have a little more torque to go up and down hills, that kind of thing, so.
So I have a few questions for you.
Go ahead.
So we're talking about roadways, and most of the roadways in the county are 20 foot wide.
Yes, sir.
Or less. I mean, we got some that's even 16 foot wide, going back to state code. But your firefighting, generally when you have a residential fire, your vehicles are parked where?
Typically at the structure as close as we can get without burning the truck up, obviously.
So that would be up the driveway.
Right, and then we
It's
would
not
have to
regulated.
lay in
Yeah,
or something of that nature.
which is not regulated.
Yeah.
Inside the International Fire Code, what is the requirements for road clearance?
20 foot wide, 13.6 inches high.
Okay, so
Hard
exactly
pack,
what we're
all of
asking.
it.
Okay, so what gives you the authority to ask for more?
Doesn't necessarily have the authority to ask for more.
Okay. You say doesn't necessarily. Do you have the authority to ask for more?
Technically, no, because there's not an ordinance or anything from the county that says no.
Okay. In an emergency, does it give you the authority to go onto private property, to pull off onto the shoulders of the road, to do whatever it takes to fight that fire?
Yep.
Okay, so that's already worked in the International
Yep.
Fire Code. Okay. So there's not really an issue there if you had to do that.
No, there is not necessarily an issue.
Okay.
It could slow us down, which is what I
Right.
said before.
But I guess the point I'm trying to get across is,
And it's not so much stuff in the yard, it's more of, if they build a wall that's 10 foot high beside my truck, that would be an issue. So, I mean, there's extreme circumstances I'm looking at, Typically, it's not gonna be that, you know what I'm saying? It could happen. It's just a worst case scenario kind of thing.
right, and going down that path, how many times do you respond to this, in these rural roads, to a structural fire emergency on that same road, generally? And you've been on, fire service now for what, 20 years?
Pretty close.
Okay,
Structure fire wise, demographically wise, we have more fires in other areas than we do.
yeah, we're talking about the rural area.
Yeah, So, I mean, in your rural area, you could have one or two over 20 to 15-year period, depending on.
Okay, and that's what I figured it would be.
Yep.
Have you always been able to fight those fires?
Not always. I mean, there has been limitations with some of them.
What was the limitations?
One specific fire I remember in Long Creek was a private drive that was over half a mile long that was not kept up, and we tore a truck up going in and out of there.
Yeah, so it's a private driveway. So once again, we're not on the private drive or private road, we're on a private driveway.
Yeah.
Which is not regulated in the International Fire Code. Matter of fact, in International Fire Code, and correct me if I'm wrong, a group R3 or group U under occupancy classification groups are exempt. 2 or less.
Yes, two or less, yes.
So therefore, you would never have a driveway for those, either type of those two structures regulated as it's written now.
That's correct, because then it's not commercial. So obviously my book don't deal with
Private.
regular single-family residential stuff.
Right. I'm not meaning to put you in the hot seat. I'm just trying to make sure that everything is across the board.
I'm trying to answer an honest and open. So.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get across is, what authority do you have? So that, I'm gonna ask that question. I
Over
know-
the residential side, I have no authority to.
Okay, and what authority is your recommendation of the International Fire Code? What they're calling out with a 20-foot width of driving surface, the 13.5-foot high. Is that sufficient enough to accomplish the task at hand?
Typically, yes. If you had a sharp bend in the road or something like that, you have to have swing allowed, but typically that's correct.
And that's added into the International Fire Code, correct?
Yeah, there would be a travel, typically when we get a plan, we have a travel path of a fire truck based on 35 foot or whatever it is. I don't know the specifics right offhand, but it's something of that nature.
Well, thank you for your time.
Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Smith. I'm County Fire Chief. So, any questions y'all got for me?
Yeah.
I would just like to add that the International Fire Code addresses the surface. So 20 foot is definitely wide enough for a fire truck to pass or to travel. My concern with the right-of-way is what people now could do if that right-of-way is reduced with fencing, with structures or other things, walls, that could prevent us from doing our job. If you do have a private road, private drive, that the house sets right off of the road, we would not turn in the driveway. We park on that 20-foot roadway. If it's in a non-hydrated area, we may have to set out a dump tank, which would not allow another fire truck to pass and dump its water. So all of it's operation stuff for us. You're correct with the fire code with the surface of 20 foot, but that doesn't address having to work off the sides of those roads. So reducing that right-of-way allows people to do other things closer to the road that they can't do now.
So I got a question to ask you, being as you brought that up. Mr. Chairman, ma'am. Yes, sir. Most of these rural areas, what's on the edge of the right-of-way or the roadway?
Grass,
What else?
trees,
What else? Ditches.
ditches.
A lot of ditches, right? A lot of
Depends on
trees.
where you're at, yes,
Water's got to go somewhere.
that's right.
So how do you accomplish your job dealing in these rural areas, which generally are less than 20
We
foot?
do pull off the side of the road so that
Okay.
other trucks can pass us.
So you're
where-
still
where we
able,
can.
you're still able to do that?
Where we can, yes.
Yeah, okay. And, so is there any additional authority that gives you the means to regulate anything outside of
I
that?
can't regulate nothing, no, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. All I'm doing is saying that this possibly could affect our operations at emergency scene. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't set regulations, no.
Okay. So just be clear, whether it be a state road right now, or county road, or a private road, you hardly ever have anything wider than 20 foot of a
Surface-wise, yes, sir.
surface-wise.
Surface-wise, yes, sir.
And in an emergency, you can always pull off of that surface,
Not always, but.
if it's logical to
That's
pull
right.
off there
Yes,
and not get
yes,
stuck.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
Yes, sir.
So you technically make that into your right-of-way temporarily, or easement temporarily, while the fire's going on.
Right. But if there is no right-of-way, then people can do other things in that right-of-way that they can't necessarily do now.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying, is that could cause a problem with operations, depending on what's there. If there's nothing there, then there's no problem.
All right. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
I'm Scott Crine, Coney County Emergency Services Director. I just wanted to just say, you talk about authority and that it is our recommendation that we have something. Because if someone can build right against the right of way, yes, we can go down it, but we can't pass. We are a hauled water system, and the fact that we use tankers in those, and we can't do it side by side if we have to set two trucks. If we have a little space that they can't build, we frequently, everyone loves gates now. Okay, the subdivision, they put a gate in, and unfortunately, during scenes, they get hit a lot as trucks go in and out, or other UPS and all those drivers, they hit them because why? They're not as wide as we're used to just in the right of way. And so we're just voicing our concern that if we shrink it to nothing, that we get buildings right up against that, right up against that passageway that doesn't allow us. With our mirrors, with the big mirrors that we have on our trucks are getting bigger and bigger. I don't like it myself, but they're getting bigger and bigger. 9.5 feet, two trucks have to be completely almost touching to pass if we are building right up against that, if we don't have something. And I'm not a proponent to the 50 foot. That's not where I'm saying. We just need a little bit of right of way. The mailboxes, you'd be shocked at the mailboxes that we clip on the road from different things because they're so close to the road when we're passing people, or even just normally coming in the bigger trucks, especially coming down 130. We have the big dump trucks coming off of the quarry all the time, and as we have to watch that for that. That's why we are just concerned. I understand, you're right. All it says is the roadway is 20 feet. What we've found is if we can have a little bit of space to do some of those other things, it allows us to operate and not be in a confined alleyway, is which if we have no right of way, it could be an alleyway. It could be a 20-foot alleyway because people could build fences right against and that's why, we say, our preference, for operational purposes is to give us a little bit of right of way off of that road.
So I got a question, Mr. Chair, Matt.
Let me ask my question first. I want to ask you this question, Mickey. So, property setbacks. What's the setback on a piece of property as far as the buildable area? And where is it measured from? Is it measured from the roadway edge, or is it measured from the right-of-way edge, which may not be the same as the roadway edge?
The setbacks, I'd have to actually go to.
And what are we allowed to put in setbacks? Mailboxes, walls,
Setbacks are
ditches?
from the roadway edge, if I remember correctly,
So,
because private properties run to the center line of the road in most of them. Am I correct?
some of them not.
Right.
Typically, what I tell people is your front setback is any property line with road frontage, and it's gonna be measured from the property line or the edge of the road right of way, whichever is more restrictive. So, in the case that, like Mickey is saying, the property line does go to the center line of the road, they would measure to the edge of the right of way, whether that be a county road if it's 50 feet, or if it's private, if there is a right of way on the it just, that takes more digging on where exactly that right of way is. Is it prescriptive? If it is prescriptive, then yes, it would be the road's edge. If it is prescriptive.
All right, so here's the scenario. We got a 20-foot wide road surface, roadway, but we've got a 32-foot right-of-way. So in that case, you've got the property, and the property's the edge of the property is at the center line of the road. So you got 10 feet plus another 6 feet. Right, and is that where you measure the setback from?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is the setback?
So it depends on the zoning, and it depends on how big the lot is with it.
Okay, let's just say for a control-free.
So make it simple, control-free, half an acre or greater, your front setback is gonna be 25 feet.
Okay, so even whether it's 10 feet from the center line with a 20-foot right-of-way, or 16 feet from the center line with a 32-foot right-of-way, there's a 25-foot setback beyond that before you got a buildable area, correct?
So for any
Approximately.
vertical structures, yes, sir.
So what can they put in the setback area? Mailboxes, ditches,
Mailboxes,
walls?
fences, you can do retaining walls,
Shrubbery, trees.
yeah, any landscaping.
So I mean, he's right, they could put shrubbery, walls, whatever, all the way up to the edge of the road.
They can put a retaining wall up against the edge of the road, yes.
Okay, that's my question.
So my question is, speaking of retaining walls, in the cities, even in Seneca, the alleyways, a lot of those roads where the buildings are pretty narrow, right?
Usually with a sidewalk, but yes, they are narrow.
They are narrow. And so how are we fighting fires in those areas? Chicago's a good example. Block after block after block of very narrow roads, huge buildings on both sides.
Number one, they have a paid fire department that provides lots and lots of people, and they have a hydranted system so that they need one fire truck to fight that directly, not multiples to haul water, so they're not going up and down the road multiple times. You park one truck in, and that becomes your fire attack. We are not at that point in our system. We have multiple trucks to haul the water because we don't have we don't have that water supply. For that, they get up and down it, and they, some places literally put, bumpers on the front of their truck to plow the vehicles out of the way because they can't get up and down the roads. Our goal is right now, as we discuss this, is not to get to that point to where we get so crowded that we ever get to that point. Yes, it's rural Oconee, but look at where we were and what we're doing. And again, I say, just a little bit of space, allowing us a little bit of buffer to be off that road. So, someone can drop a Conex box on the road's edge, directly on the road's edge, 20 feet apart, and that's the same as a building that we can't even penetrate. We're gonna have to get torches out to do that, because you can do that if there's no right of way at all. Give us a little bit of space, and we have just a little bit to maneuver past. If the first truck's not parked perfectly, we're not trying to, get around it, because we can't even get around it with the engines and those kind of things, as we aren't all perfect as a scene is not orchestrated every time. To try to make it easier operational wise, as we go through. I can, subdivision after subdivision, and you look at some of the things, they don't fit everything perfect. We just try to say, yes, that would work here, but will it always work? You know, again, roads that have fallen apart, you know, I've asked for gravel to be dropped on roads, and driveways that are private because we needed to get apparatus out of the scene to get our own equipment out because the road fell apart, unfortunately, and it was a private road. And those things, we just, keeping a little bit of that will be helpful. And we're not taking their land. We're just saying, please don't put a permanent fence or one of those structures on it.
So I got a question for you. You mentioned earlier about the trucks getting bigger and bigger. How long have you been in the fire service?
Fire service,
Yeah, emergency service?
emergency services through 30 years.
30 years. What was the general size of the fire trucks back in the 1980s, 90s?
1980s, they were roughly 8.5 feet.
Okay.
And now they're going almost 9.5 with the mirrors, to meet the new requirements and everything, than they were, and again, for the clearance of everything.
Right. So what, with the trucks getting bigger and bigger, so we're outgrowing our ability to travel on a lot of these roads if you're gonna have passing vehicles. Do we have to buy the trucks at that size for the rural areas?
To meet some of the standards, unfortunately, that's what the manufacturers are doing for custom trucks. In Mountain Rest, we ordered special trucks that's shorter because we knew we had some roads that are too steep, that our other trucks would actually not make it up the hill because the curb is not, and we would ground the back of it out. Just recently, we actually couldn't get into a driveway without, and that was actually in a subdivision, couldn't get in the driveway without grounding the truck. So we're buying, like we said, when we have specific areas that are like that, we're trying to buy mini pumpers and some of those things, but that's another apparatus that a mini pumper doesn't carry the water that a bigger truck carries.
Which I understand.
And so we're trying to do that, but again, we have a system that we call 3 stations and a paid station to get enough people on a fire scene. And so we don't have the small trucks in all of those stations everywhere.
Well, let's back up. We used to have the small trucks in every station.
Okay,
If we go back in time.
yes, okay.
We had the small trucks, but then we decided to expand and expand. And now we're asking for the property owners to give additional roadway and right-of-way. And if we keep expanding the trucks,
But are we asking to take more? I thought we were talking about taking less from them.
if,
I mean, the rule already is more than what we're asking, right?
well, that's what we're debating right now, because I cannot find anywhere in state law, other than the adoption of International Fire Code, that gives us the right to take any width of roadway on private property, on private roads, private drives.
But are we taking it?
If-
And I haven't been part of this destruction. I mean,
Well, okay.
this,
May I-
and so,
May I answer this?
you know,
So, yes, if it does not belong to you and you do not have the authority given to you in the enumerated powers, then yes, if you are requiring them not to have the use of that space as their desire, then yes, you're taking it. And a good example of that, I noticed, just to elaborate on that.
Let me add to that. So what we're trying to figure out here is the code requirement is 20 feet. International Fire Code. That's what y'all are allowed.
of the
So
surface area,
now,
correct?
the county is giving you 32 feet. We're giving you an extra
6 feet on either side.
6 feet on either side. That was what we had discussed. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, is there enough risk in not giving you that 6 feet on either side to warrant taking people's property rights? That's where we are.
Okay.
So, I mean, is that not where we are?
No, well, yes, that's partially where we are. The other thing is what gives us the authority? And this is what we should ask.
Counties do it all the time.
Well, hold on. Let me finish.
That's what gives you the authority.
No, hold on. Let me finish, please. What gives us the authority? And that's what we should always look at, is what gives us the authority to take that extra amount of footage and require it. And what I'm saying to everyone here and everyone listening, I have not found that authority. So anytime we take something that or act on unauthorized authority, we're usurping powers we do not have, or usurping authority we do not have. And therefore, we're in direct violation of state law, state constitution, and federal constitution. And just something for people to look up, Laredo versus Teleprompter in Manhattan. Supreme Court case, 1982, is a partial takings. It's basically the same thing. The county come out with an ordinance and said, hey, I want utilities in every residence. So they went out and they started putting the boxes on every house, and the guy said, hold on now, whoa, wait, this is my property and I don't want that. And you have no right to that. And it went all the way to Supreme Court, and they said, yes, that's a partial taking, because you actually touched the property. You did not allow him and did not compensate him. If we go through eminent domain, there's a compensation, and it's for public use. When you're dealing with private roads and private properties, it is strictly a social contract between private property owners and how they decide they want the road to run and be regulated for the most part. And believe me, I've searched this. And if anybody else can come up with any other data, I'll be happy to listen to it. But I cannot find any other authority given to us than International Fire Code. So therefore, the only authority we have here tonight is honor our duty to the state constitution, to the federal constitution, and only use those authorities that have been granted to us. So we can argue about it all we want to, but the question, what it boils down to tonight is, by what authority do we have to go above 20 foot?
And I don't have authority to tell you, you can. There isn't that. And the surface area is 20 feet. Recommending it and going forward to the council, that's what your job is up here. And our recommendation for public safety is to give us a little space off of that 20 feet so that we can pass two vehicles. That is the public safety side of it that we are trying to look at, is the safety of the public, to try to, if it sells, if it's what, we're not talking short little distances on some of these private roads.
Correct.
And that's the issue, is the very first road creates the restriction, and everyone past that has to pay that public safety problem, past that, point. And that's all, like I don't remember exactly which meeting it was. It was when there was talk about 50 feet and it went to 32. Again, if we have something that allows us to pass more, in not build something directly. We're not saying it's not their property. We're not saying it's not theirs. It's just that they can't put a fence.
That they can't use it.
I can't use some of mine, own property too, for my right of way. That it's about the restriction of public safety.
I think, and Mr. Chairman, so what's your definition of public safety?
Public safety is the ability for someone to receive public service from our fire, rescue, and emergency services personnel to get to their residence, to their property, or public land where they are recreationally.
So your idea of public safety is every individual, not the general public as a whole.
I don't understand.
In other words, I think tonight we heard it's the private roads are, let me quote, are for public safety. We heard it a few times. So is that necessarily public safety when it deals with a single individual? Matter of fact, last thing tonight, I heard that the government should keep you from hurting yourself or harming yourself, or protect you from yourself. That's one thing, and you know, I've read the Constitution a few times, I swore oath to it, and I've not found that in there, but what I did find is that the government's supposed to protect others from harming you, whether it be foreign or domestic. And that includes, the biggest thing therefore is protect your rights foremost.
And everyone has the right for public safety to get to their home.
I've not found that in the Constitution.
That's what you just said.
They have a right to travel, they have a right to be free. And see, that's what I'm trying to get across is when we start talking about public safety, that's been a word that's been used to really push agendas that don't have authority. Because anybody can say public safety, but what is safe to you is not safe to someone else. Just like we heard tonight is, well, the government should protect you from yourself. Think how far, if we was to go down that path, it would go.
I can understand that.
That would be extremely devastating to freedom. But anyway, back to my question is, I appreciate your time. I understand where you're coming from. I truly feel that in an emergency, you still have the right and the authority to pull off those roads. And for us to sit here and to think today that we're gonna go down a road and there'd be solid Connex boxes all the way down it, I don't think that's a realistic vision. I do think that right now as we're talking, and I'm sure when Mr. Kyle comes up here, he would be able to inform us, the most recent subdivision that went in, they did not have to grub it back and remove all those trees, brushes, and debris off to the sight line. So if that was good enough, then why are we asking anything more than the road surface? But I do appreciate your time and all that y'all do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Chairman.
David.
Yes, sir. I was trying to look at something. I got to mount an argument here.
We're saying just 20 feet. Could we not put in a suggestion in there saying it might be advantageous to you not to build right on top of the road and to leave a little space? Just a suggestion. You're not taking anybody's land, you're not doing anything else. You're just suggesting that maybe you might wonder for fire use or emergency use.
Let's let Mr. Roads and Bridges speak.
Kyle Reed with Roads and Bridges. I forgot to announce myself earlier, so I'm sorry for that. I don't know if y'all want to ask questions or if y'all want me to run through the maturation of 50, y'all want me to run the maturation of 32, 20, how do y'all want me to?
However you want to go.
Okay, so generally on a 50-foot road, the reason that it is 50, that's asked for 50 for county roads, and I will speak for county roads, and these are private roads that we're talking about, not county roads. Private roads, roads and bridges, the county has no ownership, right, whatever, to these right-of-ways or easements, whichever way you want to call them. So for a 50-foot road, that allows you room generally to get drainage, utilities, a clear zone that you can go down, and if you do happen to leave the road, then you can correct, those sorts of things. 32 gets you down to basically the bare minimum of that. It gets you so general guidance from AASHTO, the geometric design of streets and highways, low volume handbooks, all these things. DOT handbook, which our ordinance is built off of, and AASHTO handbook, which our ordinance is built off of, is going to give you the guidance of, the bare minimum for a road that you have is generally looked at as a 18-foot wide road with a 7-foot clear zone that gets you to basically 9 and 6 from the center line, which gets you to 32 feet. That gives you you have an extra foot to get emergency management vehicles down, and you can count that foot in your clear zone, and then you have 6 more feet to maneuver the road, have visibility, deer comes out behind a bush or something, whatever kind of thing that you can see obstacles coming to the road. That's basically the nutshell of why for right-of-way purposes. Generally, for right-of-way, for any road, it is the entirety of whatever you're doing to have that road. So it is, driving surface, it's shoulders, it's ditches, it's back slopes to get out, to tie back to grade, drainage, all those things. So that's on roads that get higher volumes and higher, higher traffic volumes, that's, and more utilities and all these things that you're running down through there. That's the crux of right-of-way. DOT asks for 66, as a minimum on their roads, whether they're secondary or primary, secondary roads. I think there was a question about if the collector road was gonna be, county, I think was what you were asking. So, yes and no. If y'all limit the right-of-way on private roads, that includes collectors, arterials, that you're going to infinity when you do this. So whatever that traffic is, it doesn't matter. When you say, this is the right-of-way for this road, it doesn't matter what the traffic is on that road. So for right now, that 66 foot is for private and county. If you change it, then that 66 foot would just be for collectors that are county. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There are roads in Seneca that there is no, from the center line to where the vegetation is, you can't tell me that's 33 feet. There is no way.
What do you mean as far as?
If you have a right of way, if you have a right of way, then if you're measuring from the center line, 33 feet, which 66 would be the total, correct?
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, I'm with you now. Yeah.
From the center line over, you can't tell me that that's 33 feet, because it's not.
No, I'm not saying you can't have any vegetation, that's not,
No, I'm talking full on trees and woods.
oh, yeah, so the DOT manages their right of way how they see fit. The clear zone is that 19 foot, or sorry, is that 9 and 7, which is that 16 foot. Having right of way is drainage and all these other ancillary, appurtenances to the road. So a road right of way, a road itself, the way I look at a road, is not the driving surface. The way
Oh,
I
I'm
look
not
at
talking
a road
about just driving surface.
is
I'm talking,
everything.
like if you have a 9.5 foot
Yeah.
lane,
Yeah,
the vegetation and trees, big trees are 10 feet off the road.
oh, well, I mean, yeah, it may be. Their vegetation management is gonna be different in this, in a city than it's gonna be in a rural area, that's gonna be here compared to Charlotte compared to wherever. I mean, the DOT is gonna manage their road system how they see fit to manage their.
But
road
what's
system.
the rule? Is the rule 66 feet or is the rule 50 feet or is it?
They require for new roads 66 foot of right of way on a DOT road, and that's 33 feet from the center line. Whether or not they have a tree growing up on one, we had talked about the trees that were on, waterside roads that you're talking about.
Subdivision
So you
we just
got
developed.
vegetation and limbs growing out to the road. The tree itself is wider than 7 foot off the edge of the road. That, you don't generally cut up to the sky. So you have limbs encroaching in that right of way, but if you can see, that's the deal. It's not necessarily that you have limbs growing over toward the road. I mean, there's some roads that are canopies and some.
But that's where the firemen are complaining. If they have to pull up there and the tree's right there,
No.
they can't open up their equipment.
I don't wanna speak for 'em, but
If
they're
a
not
tree's
gonna-
right on the side of the road.
Yeah, I don't wanna speak for them, but they're not gonna pull right up to the one road on the road, the one tree on the road and try to open it. They're gonna pull where they can pull.
And that's what we're saying, that there's, on these 20-foot things, you're not gonna have if you have any common sense at all, you're not gonna build a fence right on the road.
So I can.
Now, what kind of an idiot would build a fence right on a road?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean,
well-
you're just asking to get it torn down, aren't you?
I'm not gonna mention the roads now since you said that, but I can take you to plenty to where it is road, that much of a ditch, fence, and they're county roads. Slap on top of the roads. The gentleman that came in here that run equipment down those roads asking for them to be widened to like 40 feet so they can get their farm equipment down them. We have plenty that are road surface, that much of a ditch, fence,
Why is it that way?
prescriptive easement.
Prescriptive easement?
Yeah.
So you never obtained right of way?
No. The roads were accepted as they were, and it was only what we maintained. And sometimes that would be, we got pushed out to there because nobody's gonna fight with the farmer, kind of a thing, or they were fences were there before that.
So I noticed you talked a lot about, Mr. Chairman.
Let me ask a quick question while I've got it on my mind. So, would changing this affect prescriptive easements? Making this change affect?
No, this is for new roads. This is for new private roads. If you are developing and you've got, essentially
It's just stuff going forward.
four to infinity, yeah,
Not gonna affect anything out there right now.
Right.
no.
So, on the private roads, have you looked to see what authority the state has to regulate road width?
That's more of a David Root question. But it's, you just want me to say it. It's the police powers of the state that allow this to be a thing that the Comprehensive Plan Act was built under and why y'all are kind of here.
So the
The power's
Constitution,
vested into y'all.
the Constitution gives you broad authority to, as a public entity, to police public health and safety, to regulate it. But there's limitations as driven by Amendment 14. So that's.
Yes.
It's a balance.
Right. And generally those balances are based off of. So this is really Mr. Root question. So maybe after this, y'all make an event. But anyway, those generally balanced off of who it touches. And what enjoyment they still get from their property and what the people that are touched by the thing that they have done, the development, so to speak, what enjoyment they get to their property. And it's all a balance of what it is taking.
And public interest. And that's the thing that we're discussing tonight is, private roads, private drives, private driveways. Who has the authority to travel on those roads?
Who has the authority to travel on them? People that have vested rights into the road, or people that they invite there, or, delivery drivers that they purchase something from. And then public safety.
Public safety?
Public safety, yes.
When can public safety travel on those roads?
You're getting out of my depth.
Okay.
I am public roads and bridges, but yeah, you out of my depth on that
All
one.
right, well, I will answer it for you.
Go ahead.
There's 3 times that public safety can travel on those roads. Especially if they're gated, closed off, posted. Call for service. Exigent circumstances, or warrant. Those are the 3 times.
I just know I ain't going down there.
Exactly. So that's the thing that I'm trying to get across tonight, is those roads are not for public. They are private roads that the owners have come into agreement on. The public has very little to do with them.
I guess, and again, I'm here for information. I try not to be argumentative or whatever else. But I guess the question that you would have to ask yourselves is, at what point and how many people is affected by this? And I mean affected by how many people have vested rights in this to make it to change from just the handful or just the few to the many? What is And like you said, where do you turn into public? Because, yeah, it's not the general public that's going down through there,
That's a very good question.
but
So,
there's gonna be some, you know
so,
what I mean?
you know, in my opinion, when do you turn into public? I think when you turn into public is when you, as individuals, decide that you want to be public. Those property owners. And that's what it boils down to, because what we're dealing with is, one, do we have the authority? Two, even in the state law, in order to get those roads patrolled, they have to petition the sheriff's department to patrol those roads, and it takes a certain amount of the property owners to even be able to petition the sheriff's department to patrol those roads
Until a call for service.
until a call for service.
Yeah.
So what right do we have?
And when it's a call for service, they're 90 gone
Yeah,
to
they
get to
are.
you.
I wished it was that quick, but yeah, they are.
Well, I'm not,
But-
you're out of my depth. But, you know, if you got a cop coming or a fire truck coming and, you know, that's the stress. That's the big stress test of these roads. I mean, sometimes you got the neighbor that's going 60, whatever, but the big stress to these roads is gonna be, you know, so my concern really, and I'm not trying to talk about anything not on the agenda, so forgive me when I say this, but, you know, right of way goes hand in hand with the design, and that's been removed from the 26 for private roads. You know, you can do anything you want, and you can have a 30% grade on these roads and all this other stuff, and those kind of things are, you know, the questions, like you said, when does it become public? And right now, you're 0 to infinity, or 4 to infinity. There's really no design on private driveways, but you're basically 0 to infinity. You can have whatever size development you wanna have, and you have no design standards, and you're going down to a 20-foot right-of-way on roads. And just to make that clear, as far as
20-foot
what I'm seeing.
hard-packed road surface. So that does not include the drainage or anything like that.
Yeah, so. No design standards means nobody's taking a look at these roads or whatever else, and it's possibly, not that it will be, but from what I've seen, it's, people are loath to handle drainage in a good way. But the biggest thing is the clear zone and what you can see and what you can try to maneuver and how far you can see to stop and those kind of things. And that's all design.
This is probably a dumb question.
There
Are
is no
all
such
county
thing.
maintained roads public roads? Or do
Yes.
they include private?
All
Private?
county maintained roads that are under my jurisdiction are public. There are
Public
some
roads.
private roads that the county owns that are not under my jurisdiction, like the industrial parks and stuff like that.
So this change would not apply to any county maintained roads
None of
that
the
are
stuff.
not owned by the county?
None of the stuff that I have purview over, no, sir. I'm just here for information.
So Kiwi Key, is that just an example? I'm not singling out any. What, are they all private roads?
Yes, sir. They are all
And-
private roads.
What width is their right of ways typically?
I'm not sure about their right of ways, what's that?
I'm sorry, I'm just.
So, yeah, I'm not sure about their right of ways. I know that they have drainage, I know that they have utilities that run through there, but I'm not 100% sure on their right of way or their road width standards or anything else like that.
So I notice you keep saying utilities. That's part of the requirement for the roadway.
No, it's just generally seen hand in hand with right of way.
Okay, but it's not necessarily part, the
No,
utilities could
it just
come in
gives you,
from-
like, the 50-foot, 66-foot, that gives you room for utilities. That gives you room for utilities.
But, and I think you and I've had this discussion before, utilities don't necessarily run down that.
No, not, and drainage doesn't have to either. I mean, it's the same way, you know, you got perpendicular drainage going away from the road, and that's not part of the road right away. Sometimes you need it to be because somebody will block it up, but, you know, it's not part of the road right away. It's just, when you have that amount of room, you know, again, we have roads that are prescriptive easement, and we can tell somebody, yeah, you can come in here and put that in, you know, put that utility in, but you can't from just our permission. You have to get permission from the individual homeowners to put that in, even on county roads, because the prescriptive easement, we don't have subsurface rights. We can just tell them to put the right of way back, the surface back where it was, like it was before. So you just, you don't have the ability to, pull with your neighbors and decide whether you want a utility. It's one person can stop the show, kind of, so to speak. Or have to go to the other side of the road, or whatever it may be. I mean, find another way if there is another way, or you just don't get it.
So is utilities or well, you wouldn't know this answer, never mind.
No, thank you.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Anybody else got any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, let's continue our discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I think we heard a lot of common catchphrases used tonight. Public safety, public's right. A lot of kind of narrow the vision, but I think what we heard tonight was that our fire response system has grown, the vehicles have got bigger, and of course, the population has grown. But in that growth, it's the same as what we've seen with the county and the road motor graders. They too have grown to the point to where it's very hard for them to scrape some of these narrow roads that got prescriptive easements on. And now we're asking for authority we don't have. And you know, originally, I have to admit, I did come in here and I agreed to the 32 foot. And then I got to researching and going through here, and one thing that we all need to be mindful of up here is only acting on the authority we have and making sure that we're doing everything we can as citizens to keep the government in check, to only act on the authority they have been given to them by the citizens. And I cannot find anywhere in state law that gives us any authority above the adoption of International Fire Code. So therefore, tonight's an easy vote for us. It's extremely easy. We can only vote with the authority we have, and that's the 20-foot right-of-way, or the 20-foot road, hard pack owed by 13.5 foot high. It's that clearance and the hard pack area, and that's the only authority called out. We cannot run scared and say, well, we're gonna have to take all this additional road width because we might have an emergency twice in a decade on this road. We've got to remember, the county serves the people don't serve the county, and the people, the citizens, should not have to give more than what is required by law. So I think it's a pretty easy vote.
Any other discussion? Everybody ready for a vote? All in favor of changing the right-of-way from 32 feet to 20 feet? Raise your hand. All opposed?
Motion passes.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?